So welcome to this edition of ROV Meditation Practice Tips. And today, Stephen and I start a new series, an 8-part series on subtle energy meditation and anxiety. Subtle energy meditation as an antidote for anxiety and how it can really positively affect and reduce anxiety because of the different inner skills that are developed and the different steps that we take people through in the subtle energy meditation program. So we're going to go through these skills and these steps over the next 8 weeks. And we're going to begin today by talking about the relationship of interoception and mindfulness to anxiety. So let's begin with interoception. Interoception is your ability to feel inner sensations and the internal state of your mind and emotions. So now there is research on anxiety that shows that for some people that interoception is really heightened and people are more highly sensitive to interoceptive signals, and that actually contributes to their anxiety. So it's really important to talk about the combination of mindfulness with interoception and how that has a really positive effect on anxiety. So that's what we'll do here today. So let's begin with interoception. Interoception is the ability to sense what's happening in here versus what's happening out there. So say you're feeling anxious and maybe you're feeling butterflies in your stomach or a tightness in your stomach. So how do you, the key to if you end up feeling anxious about something or not, is how you appraise what you're feeling, how you evaluate it, how you evaluate and interpret what's happening both inside and around you. And anxiety research shows that if you tend to have a negative self-image, in other words, if you tend to be kind of critical and judgmental on yourself, or if you have low self-esteem, that you will tend to interpret whatever is happening both internally and around you in a way that makes you feel vulnerable. Okay, so when you feel vulnerable, that's when you start to get anxious. You start to, if you don't feel a personal power in a situation to handle it and take care of it, if you don't feel like you have the resources you need to handle whatever is happening both internally or around you, you're going to feel vulnerable and you're going to start to feel anxious. So this relationship that we have to what's happening inside us and around us is the key point. And so this is where mindfulness comes in. So Stephen's going to talk about how mindfulness really changes the way we relate to what's happening internally and around us in a way that can help reduce anxiety. So Stephen, I'll pass it over to you to talk a little about mindfulness and give some examples of how it can work.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Thank you. So love and blessings to everybody. This is such a wonderful subject, the power of interoception and mindfulness. So I'm going to particularly speak about mindfulness first with an example that I can relate from my daughter and her own relationship to mindfulness. So she's only 7 years old. First of all, mindfulness itself. So there's been a lot of research on mindfulness, and it's kind of an umbrella term that people use to describe a large number of practices, processes, and characteristics. And sometimes this leads to misinformation because people think that mindfulness is meditation. And in fact, mindfulness and other forms of meditation have been shown to modulate the insula in the brain, which is the primary hub for interoception. So this could lead us to consider that interoception is really foundational to mindfulness and might be the primary mechanism with which we benefit from the practice. So this is part of what Kevin and I have explored for quite some time now is the relationship between interoception and mindfulness, and also many of the functions around that, such as attention, awareness, and all the subjective experiences that people link to mindfulness. So there is certainly a lot of evidence that, you know, the benefits of mindfulness do produce neuroplasticity and many other functional effects. And I'm going to speak particularly about 4 of them today that as I have said, that my wee daughter, who's only 7, has definitely found most useful in becoming a curious observer. So when we look at mindfulness itself, it tends to have four elements that we can readily identify, and that seem to be identified in most of the current literature. So one of them is attention and attention regulation. The second one is body awareness. The third one is emotional regulation. And the fourth one is a change in our perspective, particularly our change in perspective with relationship to the self. So what tends to happen is that as the more and more we become a curious observer, the more this heightens our awareness, right? And we have improvements in our awareness, particularly our meta-awareness, and the way that we relate to this nature of self, and we become that awareness. So that's something that Kevin and I, heavenly Kevin, that Kevin and I are going to reach out towards over this 8-part series. So particularly these 4 basic elements of mindfulness. So I'm going to describe to you the practice that I do with my daughter when she gets overcome by strong emotions. And it's a practice you can do yourself in relationship to anxiety, because it's often about anxiety that my daughter has these struggles. So remembering that she's 7, so she's dealing with it in her 7-year-old way. So one of the things that I seem to have inherited, and my daughter has inherited, is this propensity to have really strong dreams. So I'm a lucid dreamer, very avid lucid dreamer, and I can lucid dream at will. And my daughter has really strong dreams. And additionally, she can remember events from her entire life and their full emotional content. So we'll be sitting there, you know, at the dinner table, and she'll say, "Oh, memory, memory." So this is the way she describes it. Memory, memory, she says, you know, memory of choking on a sweet. You know, so she has this particular memory of when she was really little and she choked on the sweet, and I had to bang her back and help her to release that. So she has this memory that, and she has lots of memories like this, and she remembers them with exquisite detail. It's quite, and not comfortable detail either. So she has a lot of anxiety around it. So the first thing I get her to do generally is to be a curious observer. So this is the mindfulness practice. So I get her to, first of all, bring her attention to it. So I say, okay, bring your attention to that memory, right? Like a curious observer, which she does. So that's step 1. So if you're experiencing anxiety at the moment, you may want to do this just as a practice. So try now, just bring a sense of allowing and embracing. Just simply allow the anxiety to be present. Don't try to push it away, and don't try to grab on it either. Just allow it to be present. Then the second thing I get her to do is to be aware in her body. So to get curious about her body awareness and where she feels this emotion, right? So she's got this choking feeling, because of course she feels it in her throat. So she's still got this memory, this actual very poignant memory of this experience. So you can do the same thing. If you've got a sense of anxiety, where do you feel this? Is it in your head? Is it in your throat? Is it in your chest? Is it in your belly? So that's the second part, right? First, attention, like a curious observer to the anxiety. Allow it to be there. Don't push it away. Don't grab onto it. And then second, get curious about where this arises in your body. So for my daughter, in this case, it's this choking sensation in her throat that she has this memory, and it makes her throat tighten every time she recalls it. So the third is emotional regulation. Now, this is often the trickiest part for people, and certainly for a little one, when she's feeling these emotions. So I ask her to give the emotion. So I ask her what it feels like, and it's tense, right? It's an anxiety and it's tense in her throat. So I say, can you give it a color? And she's really good at that. She likes doing that as the first step. So she says, yeah, oh yeah, it's white. And I say, okay, can you give it a shape? She says, yeah, it's a triangle and it's kind of stuck. And I said, okay, and is it heavy or light? She says, heavy, right? So I tend to focus on color, shape, and weight. For her, that's kind of easy, simple. So this is a way of regulating your emotion, because then you're still being curious about it, but you're actually disassociating from the emotion itself, and you're breaking down the emotion into components. So you're effectively regulating it. And I know at this point, always that tightness or constriction in the throat starts to relax a little. So I say, okay, and then can you bring that outside yourself? So here's the fourth component. As a curious observer, you change your perspective. You change the perspective to yourself, because when it's in there, you feel like that anxiety is kind of grabbing onto you. And when she brings it outside of herself, then there's a change in perspective. You actually see it outside. So you can try that with your anxiety. So you've identified whether it has a color, a shape, or a weight, or you could do temperature or other things like, does it have a message for you? And then change your perspective to it, right? Because we quite often get stuck in a particular perspective. So shift your perspective. So she draws that outside of herself. And then I get her to send that. I get her to do lots of different things. Mostly we have a bit of fun with it. I have to say, for a 7-year-old, that's, over the years I've worked with her with this, the most effective way of bringing this curious observation is actually humor. So when I say, oh, turn it into a piece of bubble gum, stretch it, put it in your mouth and blow it up and now pop it, she goes, oh, that's so funny. And I say, how do you feel now? And she says, oh, well, I can't find the feeling. So there's that, or you can send it off into the universe to explore. I often get it to turn into a luck dragon or a Pegasus flying horse, and she jumps on the back of this, anxiety or this tension, and she rides it right off into the universe and then comes back with a message. So she changes her perspective to this. And of course, in doing this, there's a change in perspective on the self. Instead of awareness being clutching and tense, awareness is suddenly free to go and explore the universe. So I just thought that might be a really useful practice for some of you listening to this who might struggle with anxiety, or just if you've got worries generally about things in the state of our world. And every time it comes up, you can follow that simple 4-step process. 1, bring your attention to it like a curious observer. 2, bring your body awareness to it so that you're aware, as a curious observer, where that anxiety arises in your body. 3, practice some kind of emotional regulation, such as, how does the emotion feel, look? Does it have a shape? Does it have a weight? Does it have a color? Right? And then change your perspective to it in terms of yourself. So put the emotion outside, curiously observe it outside of yourself, this shape, this color, this weight, and then experiment with it, right? Be flexible with it, be adaptable, allow this change in perspective to literally change the emotion itself. And so that's worked very successfully with her over a number of years, and we've practiced it again and again. So I would also say that with those 4 elements, consistent practice is really, really tremendously helpful. And it brings a new shift or a perspective in yourself, and it moves you closer and closer towards meta-awareness or non-dual awareness or being awareness, and all of those kind of infinite possibilities that life unfolds for us. So Kevin, I'll pass back to you on that after that little example.
Beautiful. That's just a wonderful example. And I love that image of her. Now she's riding on it, and she's now she's in charge, right? She's in a whole new position, a whole new relationship to this feeling that arose in this situation. And that's really a key with anxiety, is shifting that perspective from where you feel powerless and vulnerable to where you feel like, oh, okay, I have resources, I can handle this, I can be in charge, I can take action and make a difference in how I feel and how the world feels to me. So thank you for that great example. And thank you all for watching, and enjoy this series on subtle energy meditation and anxiety. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.